Little motherfucker, he's going, Tony. He's going big time.
You sure it was Jackie Jr.?
I find him, I'm doing him tonight.
No, you're not.
Why not?
Because I said so.
Why?
I don't gotta explain anything to you.
Because he's Jackie April's kid? You're not gonna let this go. You can't do that. He took a shot at me. He tried to kill Furio. We're made.
Well, every person you whack, you risk exposure. Major murder, it's what the feds asked for Christmas.
Bullshit. You're a fucking hypocrite.
The fuck did you say?
You preach all this wise guy shit, and meanwhile, the only ones who gotta play by the rules are us. I loved you.
What happens I decide, not you. Now, you don't love me anymore, well, that breaks my heart, but it's still fucking bad, because you don't gotta love me. But you will respect me.
That's right. We are back. Cut to black, a Sopranos sit down after a brief, extremely brief hiatus. We are back in the podcast chairs to discuss the Sopranos.
Yes, and I cannot, just as we were listening to that clip, I can't help but imagine where Tony Sopranos, two Tony Sopranos, and Christopher, of course, is our listeners who loved us, man, and we went away, like, and we're gonna do you tonight, and yeah, so we are back, and you don't gotta love us, but you will respect us, and basically, we were gone, now we're back. You're probably listening on the podcast 2 years in the future. You have no idea what's going on.
Yes, but I mean, we got word from at least one person that was like, "Oh my God, it's canceled. They've been canceled." No, we're back. We apologize. We're back in the groove. We're here to finish out season 3. But before we get to that, what do we got? We got a couple nice reviews and a nice email. Where are we going first?
Well, I would like to encourage everyone to leave a review. Maybe we won't go away again if you leave a review, so why don't I just go through that? First off, there's Vark, who titled this a must for Sopranos fans, and described our podcast as informative and fun. So, you know, that's nice and brief. This person is from Ireland, so I can only assume it's one of the people I hornswoggled into watching the show after coming over here. We also have a review from Free Carmilla, who wrote a review called Funny and Insightful Sopranos Breakdown. And the review goes like this. I thought I had already written a review, but apparently I haven't, so here goes. The Sopranos Sit-Down podcast is both intelligent and colloquial, just like The Sopranos itself, in its thoughtful breakdown of the best show of all time. Jim and Jacob's insightful takes on each episode makes me feel like I'm watching the show all over again for the first time. I also can't get enough of the walkout and death counters, and I'm not sure what's funnier, the actual audio clips, or Jim and Jacob's laughter and sheer joy following the playing of said clips. Either way, keep up the good work. You're my favorite weekly podcast. Oh, sorry about that. And I look forward to listening to the rest of the series. And when you're finished with The Sopranos, here's my sheerless plea for a Mad Men breakdown next.
Very kind review. I appreciate that. Mad Men actually wouldn't be a bad idea for a look back. I feel like I've completely forgotten that show. But I did love that show, but I've completely forgotten it. I remember there was a diner episode, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I remember. It's not that distant for me because I did binge through it at one point. Unfortunately, we both have watched that one, so it wouldn't be the same type of dynamic. But hey, if you want us to watch Mad Men or another show, the best way to leave your vote is in a review on iTunes. Because guess what? If you leave a review on iTunes, we know you're going to review our next show when that comes out. It means you're our most valuable fans, so we'll cater to you. Jim, what about that email?
We got an email from Charlie here. Jim and Jacob, thank you all for doing the Cut to Black podcast. I enjoy listening each week. Ooh. And I think you two do a tremendous job of unpacking thematic, cinematic, and cultural elements of the show, tracing the character development that is what makes the show so incredible, and recognizing the playful moments as well. You have a great insight, but also demonstrate a humility that can be in short supply in the podcast genre. I don't know where that shade's going at, although I guess they're, I guess podcasts can be pretty pompous. I'd say we're even pretty pompous sometimes as well. But
yeah, I'm surprised by that description.
I gave the show 5 stars as Silvio's provolone, and as soon as I find a way to give it 6 stars, I'll engage in some stuffing of the ballot box. In your discussion, and he also has some observations here. In your discussion of the role of the Russian in Pine Barrens, I had a thought I wanted to float by you.
Oh,
Well,
quick! I'm just going to cut you off for a second. We did give a spoiler warning when we discussed the Russian in that episode. So I just wanted to say, if you still don't want to know anything about the Russians' future, just skip ahead like 30 seconds and you'll be good.
yes. While my desire for a tidy wrap up makes me want to know exactly what happened to him, the mystery of the outcome gives us the opportunity to empathize with Tony and the rest of the mobsters. They live with the possibility of doom from past deeds hanging over them each second of each day, whether getting pinched from a long ago crime, getting whacked by an old enemy, or other negative outcome. They live each moment knowing that it could come crashing down. With the Russian, David Chase transfers some of that fear and anxiety to the viewers. We don't know what happened, and it's unsettling and uncomfortable. We now feel the weight of the unknown that hounds these characters we can't help but love. I think that's a valid read on that. I don't know how planned it was for them to do that, but I do think that's a valid read, because the way we read David Chase talking about it, it was just kind of like, well, whatever, the Russian, enough. Have a white Russian, just have a drink, get out of my face.
Yeah.
And then his observation as well comes as I've convinced my girlfriend to watch The Sopranos. Apparently not everyone finds it hilarious when Tony punches the guy in the broken leg after running him over. What I noticed in this go-around was how quickly Meadow and Christopher's relationship changes. Early on, they very much seemed to be peers and close friends. Before too long, they seemed to rarely, if ever, interact. Not particularly poignant, but interesting character development. And thanks for a great hour each week. Thank you so much for the email. You can definitely email us at showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com with any takes or observations or thoughts on the characters or what we're discussing on the show. It's highly appreciative. And I do think that is interesting. It is almost like, with Christopher, he was more of a big brother-y type character. I mean, did sell her drugs, and he did scare the shit out of her when he was afraid that Tony was trying to have him whacked. But yeah, I guess it's kind of the growth, I guess, put that in quotes, the growth of the Christopher character, because even as we've seen in the start of this episode, I'm a made guy. And as we saw him in like the earlier episodes this season when he's like, not to be an asshole, but I can't be seen in places like this anymore. I can't just be hanging out with some college chick. He's got bigger fish to fry.
Well, I thought it really reminded me of that, which you do forget as Christopher advances in the hierarchy. And Jackie Jr. definitely takes over that role because he's now where Christopher was. And, they shove him in the story like they like to do in The Sopranos. Like, yeah, this guy's been here all along, remember? Yeah. And, like, Jackie's there, and he's now Christopher from before, basically, because he's hanging out with Meadow. And I don't remember, was there a little chemistry between Christopher and Meadow, maybe, in Season 1? A little bit?
I don't remember any, like, romantic thing. No, it always felt like a big brother, like, I guess it's more than anything, it was a reflection on Christopher's role, and I guess how they wanted the audience to see him as more of a young buck, especially the way Tony would talk about him being like the next generation of lazy idiots.
Yeah.
And you're right. They put that more on Jackie Jr. and then last year on Bevilacqua and whatever his friend's name was.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And what was I going to say? That Christopher, that must have been my fan fiction. That was it. Where they had the chemistry. Yeah. I always get those confused. But yes, thank you very much for the email. That is an interesting tidbit, and we get to see the change in Christopher. It would be a bit interesting to see them interact again, because it's almost like, oh, let's just not give them any scenes. I'd be more interested in, like, how do they relate to each other now, because of course, Meadows a bit into Jackie Jr., in part because he's part of the family and whatever, but she's not really attracted to the mobster side. But, like, what is her opinion even of Christopher at this point? Because she thinks her dad is a hypocrite, giving her cars and whatnot. But what about, like, her friend Christopher and stuff like that? Anyway, maybe we'll get more scenes like that.
Yes. Now we'll on to the 12th episode of this season, Amour.
And that's pronounced Amofo?
Amofo, yeah. Written by Frank Ranzulli from a story idea by David Chase, directed by Tim Van Patten. These are all Sopranos mainstays. They're bringing in the big guns because the season's coming to a close here. We start out with Meadow and Carmela at an art museum, and what Meadow comes from the bathroom. She needs a tampon. She's spotting. I'm not Meadow. Carmilla. I'm sorry. She's spotting. Now, this whole Carmilla through line, I don't really know what to read from this because yet again we have Carmilla. I mean, I guess this springs from her body physically changing. Like I didn't know if they were going to go down some sort of weird pregnancy path or something again, because remember that was a thing.
Yeah.
Which I guess would be last season. I don't think that was this season when, she's like, I want another baby, which kind of was a thing that brought up and never came back again. And through this episode, because I just want to stay with this through line for a moment. Like then we start crying to a dog commercial, and I didn't know if it was going to be like menopause or pregnancy, but then she thinks that maybe she has cancer. And then she goes to see a priest again, and we get yet another discussion of her being sad about her way of life and being married to Tony Soprano, but loving her big ring and all the money and cars that she gets. And I guess it's this brush with death that makes her want to study real estate, because that's where it comes around to. Like, what's the read here?
Yeah, I don't think it's bad, but it sounds funny the way you say it, of like, and then she wants to study real estate. It is strange. I definitely thought, like, first thought in the first scene, like, okay, so this is like the menopause episode, because she's looking at a baby and all crying and her body's changing and things are happening. I thought that was it, because I remembered the baby thing, and I thought that was going to be like, oh, that thing you wanted is not going to happen. This will kick her into some sort of action. But yeah, I guess she does say at the end that she did go see someone. Oh yeah, no, we even see her go see someone, gets it checked out, and it's just whatever, basically, right? I mean, it's just
it's like they say it's like a thyroid problem or something like that, like a thyroid issue. But I mean, I guess nothing to be fully concerned about, when the thought was that she thought she had like ovarian cancer or something like that.
So Carmella's always stepping up to a ledge and then like stepping back from it. That's her whole character all the time in every season. Like whether it's with the priest, whether it's with the carpenter guy that she actually was going to do something with, or getting a baby, or this like gonna leave Tony again like 5 different times and steps up to it. And when she was with the therapist before, who said like, this is blood money, you must leave this man. Like I thought, like, great, okay, we're getting over the edge now. And now, let's just step back a little bit again. At the same time, it is sort of, I don't know, they managed to make it interesting every time as well.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The very first shot of the episode is of the ring. And at the end there, she's obviously gotten rid of the ring, or not wearing it at least, because she has to sort of find the balance, as the priest says, find the inner line that she's not willing to cross, and where she can go with it. The priest, who, by the way, says like, oh, but there's good in him too, even though he's a mobster. Like, okay, Mr. Priest, come on.
Yeah, it is interesting how it's a different priest from, Father Phil. But he's still kind of giving the similar advice. So it is like they do want us to be like, look, the church is kind of bullshit. Because I don't know if, I mean, I guess there's nothing to say that this particular priest would be swayed by any type of Tony Soprano influence, whether it be he's donating to the church or something. He's just he's just kind of, I mean, it's not a bad way to look at life, where it's like, there's good in everyone. But, I guess it is kind of an interesting choice that so far it's only was, well, no, I was going to say he wasn't a rabbi. He was just a priest, wasn't he? I'm not a priest. He was just a therapist that told her, like, no, you need to just go away and give it all back.
I don't think it was a rabbi. It was just a Jewish guy, Jim.
Yeah, I think it was a Jewish guy.
Yeah.
But either way.
But yeah, it is interesting because, of course, they're like, oh, but divorce is the devil. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I forgot that there's people who think that way still. Like, stop going to priests. They're going to give you the worst advice, Carmella.
And then I guess from there, we have Gloria stalking Tony in a parking garage where she's here back to apologize. She needs Tony back. And it's weird because remembering this, like going by memory of watching this, I somehow remembered it more that Tony was more all in with this relationship, but I guess I didn't notice it on my initial watch that he's kind of like already checked out even before she starts really freaking out. he's already kind of like, all right, I don't need this in my life. Like, this was fun, but I'm over it. But you know, she's in it. She wants Tony back, and I guess he does kind of accept her apology because I guess he thinks she's hot. Like, is that basically where it comes down to? Is that why he brings
Yeah.
her back?
That's pretty much it. And also, it has been a little while. We did take a short hiatus. But yes, the way I remembered it as well, it was like, oh yeah, she did throw the steak or whatever at his face, but like she was always doing shit like that, and he was always just like, okay, cool, whatever. Like, he was upset, and then she was sexy, and he was like, okay, I'm not upset anymore. So this is basically what's happening here again. And they do remind us, like, you threw a fucking dinner at my head, Gloria, and so on. And he does bring up here as well, like, if you were a guy, you'd know where you'd be, like the whole death thing that goes through the episode. That's actually part of the thrill for her. But yeah, so she actually opens up a bit, says that, you know, she's things going on with her family and this shit, and I didn't want to bother you, but it got to me, and I'm sorry, it won't happen again. And he's like, oh, okay. I think partly, yeah, she's being sexy, but also like opening up a little bit for some reason actually works for him, even though when she opens up more later, he doesn't want to hear it.
I was gonna say I love that though, because later on it's I mean, we'll get to the scene, but he's like, you know, hey, if you don't want to talk about it, it's fine. But also I mean, I guess this is something to point out. I don't know if it's necessarily means anything, but I did just remember that she does like kind of ambush him in the parking garage at the Melfi place.
Yeah.
So, you know, and as we saw this season, that's where Melfi was ambushed and raped. But now we have a woman stalking a man. So there you go. Equal time, everybody. Because then it cuts to Tony in Melfi's office, and he's like, is she a loop-de-loo? What's going on with this broad? And I think that's where Melfi gives the titular line, because it means crazy love, I believe.
Yeah.
Amour fou. And that we also get, you know, there's no charge for this because you overpaid, because he did tip her initially because he was so happy that he found Gloria. Like, oh, this is so great. Here's extra money. But now it's like, who's this crazy broad I got? She's throwing sticks at my head. And what's interesting is, as we go through this episode, we'll talk about it more later. It's so obvious. You know, I mean, Melfi basically says it in the last episode, because, you know, it seems like it should end on the Pine Barren stuff with Paulie looking out the window at the woods and the harsh realities of nature. But we cut back to Tony and Melfi, where, you know, she lays it on pretty thick. Does this lady remind you of anyone? And it takes this whole episode for Tony to get there, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I swear that was even brought up even earlier than that. Like,
the
type of women you hang out with, who do they remind you of, and so on. But yeah, there are things that Tony likes about her. She's independent. She went on a trip all by herself and all that. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, yeah, it's the parking garage of the therapy place, which, again, the weirdest architecture in this place ever, with this parking garage. And then you go through a meat shop or something to get in sometimes, and there's a dentist, but whatever. So this parking garage. And I'm like, well, she could have just had her appointment and just happened to see Tony. And then I'm like, well, no, that's probably what she would like him to think. There's no way. They never met before they scheduled it wrong. They have therapy on different days. Like, there's no way she was there because she knew when he was going to be there. So that's what I'm thinking about. Meanwhile, Tony's in there saying, oh, she's independent. I like that. So, yeah.
And yeah, I guess, and she says, you know, what does she see in you? Kind of throwing shade at Tony, you know, hey, like, you overrate balding piece of shit. What does she see in you? Although many people do say that Tony Soprano is very sexy, and I guess I could see that. And you know, he mentions how he's a tough guy. We brought up when they were at the zoo how he was kind of like, especially the way he was all over her. He was like a big bear, like a big, you know, big animal. And you know, I think they talk about playing with fire. And I mean, we see it play out to, you know, the full degree that there's definitely fire being played with, and potential, like, you know, I want to die, and maybe this dangerous mobster will murder me if I push the right buttons.
Yeah, and yeah, I that's obviously there. Like, we see it in the episode, but it's almost like She's not doing that consciously, I think, obviously, which makes it interesting that this is where they get into that stuff. I mean, the way Tony says it, at least he's not one of these crybabies. He's a tough guy, and like you mentioned, people are drawn to fire. And meanwhile, they're also talking about the complicated, dark. He says she has dark eyes, and she's like, "Oh, you said she was dark." Like, really trying to, like, come on, Tony, open your eyes here. And yeah, it doesn't really take that much for him to change his mind later. But I guess, yeah, we'll get there. In the next scene here, we do have. Let's see what's happening here. Oh, our boy Jackie Jr. Now I messaged you. Saying Jackie Jr. is so fucking stupid after watching this episode, because it's really like mind-boggling how bad he is at everything he tries to do. So he's brought his friend along, and they're kicking up some cash like you do, and they want some protection for it. Do they get it?
What is he? I forget what he says, because yeah, again, it has been a little bit. I mean, Ralphie's being kind of nice to them. And as we see later, like, I guess even Christopher a little bit. Like, I guess that's why they're starting to feel more comfortable. They're starting to feel like they're connected guys or something. But even though like Jackie, like Tony is very upset with you. Why do you keep messing shit up? And you've already blew it with Meadow. So, I mean, I guess this is just a natural path for Jackie Jr. because he's a clueless moron.
Well, yes, very clueless. And yeah, he basically, Ralphie says, oh, you got to do a bit more than that. And I want to skip ahead a little bit. Well, I guess not. Okay, but we can go quite quickly through it since we talked about Gloria a bunch. There is this Gloria scene where they're in bed. She does her sexy dancing. She tells about her family and all that.
And that's where Tony shows that he really doesn't give a shit, because when she does start to get on about, her nieces and her sister's husband, and Tony, he's got his cigar and he's kind of like, well, if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. And such a like transparent, I don't give a shit. And then he even does his Hesh thing where he starts to try to talk about something that's on his mind, because he ends up like, we had a new Santa Claus this year. He wasn't very good. And she's still going, and she has an offhanded comment of like, hey, maybe we'll just get splattered by a bus, and that'll take care of everything. And he's like, oh, in his classic Tony way. And she's like, oh, it's just a fucking joke, but hey, fuck him, right? And yeah, she quickly is able to win Tony back by doing a sexy dance and singing a song and getting in his lap. So.
A lot of this show sounds worse when you say it out loud. It's actually a good scene. But yeah, she does win him back with a sexy dance. I wanted to get to the next scene because we get Jackie Jr. here again. I'm assuming this is the same pizza place as before that Christopher came into and he couldn't be seen in anymore. Or is it?
This is the don't respect the pizza joint. This is when they were initially like yelling at Jackie about this, and now they're telling people to respect the pizza joint.
Yeah, because he's got a piece now, so he feels like he's got to do that, or like the owner's a dear friend. And meanwhile, he's just annoyed that they're pulling out guns in his place. Like the people, like the guys, what are they doing? They got their feet on the table. Is that the thing? I guess they're smoking. That's pretty bad. I suppose.
mean, I guess it's weirdly reminiscent of, when Tony goes up and makes that guy take his hat off in the restaurant. It's like, it's a classic Jackie move of like he's almost there. He almost has the right idea of what like a Tony Soprano or someone that knows will do, like knows shit will do as correctly. Where he is trying to, respect the sanctity of the pizza parlor, but in the end, he's pulling out guns and making things way worse. And it's not a good look.
Yeah, and then Christopher comes in, and they're worried about he's gonna see the gun or whatever, but actually Christopher is not that upset about it. He's like, oh, you straightened them out. How many were there? And
they're upset about the broken bottles that I guess I've been collecting them for 20 years. Who gives a fuck, right?
Yeah. And I guess Christopher actually came here to find them because he's like, hey, I got a truck, my favorite, and hey, cigarettes. You in? And they're like, we're with Ralphie now, huh? And then he's like, okay, well, if you change your mind. And they get to go like, oh, we're a hot commodity. Everyone wants a piece of us because they're stupid.
Yeah, but it is kind of like they are dumb, but they almost are kind of on the come up, because even having that small interaction with Ralphie, and he's kind of playing them because it's like, you get the opportunity to kick up money to me. And then Chris is just seeking them out for something. So it again, it is similar to like Bevilacqua. It's like you're kind of in the right place. Play your cards right. Haha, cards. Play your cards right, and maybe something will come out of this. But of course, you're fucking dumb. And
well, yeah, it is very similar to the kids last season, because they were just like, we're gonna kill Chris. Like, this is gonna fix it. But like, we're gonna get huge. And it's like, you do not understand how anything works. You've watched movies and you think if you shoot someone, everyone's gonna like you? That's not even how it goes in the movies. You gotta shoot the right people. How do they not grasp that? Similarly, you gotta rob the right people. You can't just rob, the guy you're actually trying to impress. Anyway, we'll get there. Next scene, Gloria does another great thing and gives Mrs. Soprano a drive home. What a nice lady.
yeah, Gloria is acting like Jackie Jr. here, making bad decisions. And the ring, the way the ring plays out, I think is interesting. And I like that it ends with Carmela not wearing it, but unknowingly, she's nailing the theme of the episode. So good for her, because it's like Gloria, calls that out as like some gaudy, like bullshit ring. Like, I'm not just going to be some, Goomba housewife that's happy with a ring. And then Carmela's kind of coming around on that as well on her own. Like, it doesn't take her finding out who Gloria is to do that. So I do like how that kind of comes together. And yeah, Gloria starts being like kind of a maniac, driving a little fast and just, doing what she does.
Yeah, exactly. And, she does a little peek at the house, thinking, this is going to be great. Nothing bad will come of this, except obviously she's pulled in different directions in her mind as well. Obviously, like she knows that wouldn't be a completely normal thing to do. Obviously, well, she thinks about it.
And especially, not that I would get this choice either way, but if it was like she didn't just apologize and kind of get Tony back, I would almost understand it as like she's being this crazy mistress and this is her way of like trying to peek back into Tony's life because she's an outsider. Mm-hmm. But she's back with Tony, kind of. Yeah. He wasn't fully listening to her story or concerned about, her nieces and nephews, but that didn't end on a bad note, at least as far as we saw. So her doing this, she truly is playing with fire and pushing buttons for no reason.
Yeah. And exactly, playing with fire, pushing buttons. And it's like every time everything's okay with them, she has to find a thing to make it not okay. Obviously, for reasons that will become apparent or are already apparent to Melfi and anyone paying attention. Next scene is great because we get Ralphie telling a story that goes like, when we were kids, we used to have this crew, me, your dad, Tonio, Silvio. Of course, I was there all along. It's so funny to me. But yeah, so he tells this story, and I guess it's fair. He didn't get on the come up because Tonio and Jackie Sr. actually did this robbery of a maid guy from the other side of the pond with no known connections here, right? That's how I read it. That's why it's fine to rob him, right? Or am I wrong?
No, it's Feach LaMotta's card game. This is actually not the first we've heard of Feach.
This is the one they were peeking through the keyhole or whatever at, and now they're running it?
Actually, that might have been it as well, but also, even besides that, if we go back to season 2, episode 3, maybe, is it? Or maybe 2? Basically, I got a clip. It's our boy Richie's first episode, and he meets Tony in the mall, and here we go.
Well, I'm the guy who saved you from the hit parade. When? When did you ever step in for me?
You forget? When you and my kid brother stuck up Feach LaMotta's card game? Feach was made before the electric light. If it wasn't for me, you two kids would have caught a vicious beating, to say the least.
Richie, you know I love you.
You're like my big brother, okay? You're gonna be taken care of. What was yours before you went away will be yours again. Just gotta give it some time.
But yeah, so this has been mentioned before, and it might even be related to the card game they talk about as well. But that might have been Tony's father's game. I forget. But either way, Feech, and Feech might be someone we hear from again. So he wasn't necessarily fully disconnected from things. We know he's not around now, but it was a big deal. But you know, they played it right. They didn't murder a bunch of people.
Oh yeah, that's always a plus because it's pretty difficult to squash a beef once people start dying immediately. And I mean, their reasoning after this is such shit because it's like they robbed a card game. We should rob a card game. Like that's the factor, that it was a card game, not like who it was and when it was, and that you were showing your big swinging dick all over the place. Like, no, you're being dumb kids. Anyone who robs this card game, like, and this is Ralphie's card game. Ralphie just told them the story, and it's so stupid. I don't understand it. And they're going to do that because they want to get in good with Chris. Like, Chris wants to rob Ralphie. Like, he's a made guy, yeah, but Ralphie's a captain, and yeah, he's crazy, but like, you can't think this is a good idea.
In a weird way, I do feel like if they did it properly, it would have worked. Like the way Ralphie talks about it is that there was a sit down, some of the right people got their money back. And even if like say it just went off without a hitch, they just took the money and got away. I think Ralphie obviously would put it together like, I just told this story, and he could even, I mean, depending on how he goes from there, where it's like, they're just trying to show they're stepping up, and, you know, going back to Richie, you know, oh, you stepping up, huh? Well, I put it in drive or whatever he did, you know, but yeah. I feel like it maybe would have worked, but they just don't know anything. So there you
go. But Christopher's there. That's the guy they wanted to impress this time. He's getting robbed. And like, I just imagine Tony, who's already pissed off at Jackie, like, he's the boss. He's the guy you need to not hate you. And it's like, oh yeah, I really hate this piece of shit Jackie Jr. right now because of what he's done to my daughter and just in general being a lying piece of shit. And then he's like, oh, and he also robbed my card game. And even if no one got killed, it's like, Jackie, what the fuck are you doing? And I guess maybe he could have talked his way out of it because he can talk his way out of anything with his bullshit. Like, it happens again and again. But Tony said he bottomed out. And I don't know. It is interesting, though, because like obviously...
I feel like he would have been... I'm sorry to cut you off, but...
No, it's okay.
I feel like he would have impressed Ralphie.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I know they're trying to impress Chris and like that, you know, that's dumb. But I feel like... they would have impressed Ralphie, and he would have been like, I told these, because especially even though it's not like we know Ralphie to be some rational, you know, even-tempered person, but in a weird way, I feel like that's why he would be impressed and be like, I told these kids the other night, and then they the balls to rob my card game. Come here, you give him a nookie.
Yeah.
You're really you are the heir apparent. You're the Jackie Jr., the next April, but it didn't quite go that way.
That's true, but he'd cap the other guys. Like, he'd raise up Jackie and kill his friends because he's fucking crazy. But yeah, so anyway, he tells the story. It is a good story. It is also interesting the way they show the kids after that, like, smoking outside, and then, like, going in, watching a movie. Like, call him. No, you call him. Move over. It's my couch. Like, doing nothing. Which is really very interesting to put all that stuff in there.
I think the reason why is because every time they go to it, it's Jackie's the one pushing for it. And his friend is just kind of like, haha, yeah, imagine, you know, we did that. And then, I mean, although Jackie's still not, like, direct, like, he's still telling him to call him. Mm-hmm. But he's still the one that keeps bringing it up. And what they say something about Ralphie, and I think Jackie calls him a secret fag. And then they both sit down really close and watch the Basic Instinct scene where I guess that's also just shows how, like, immature and, you know, kind of young, dumb, and full of cum they are.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And a less young person, I did, but also very full of, I did want to mention Tony when he's at Gloria's place. This is before he finds out that she drove his wife home. But the slashed tires. So was that his ex, do you think?
I don't think so. I mean,
what do you think?
The one of the cliche things would be that like she slashed her own tires because she's fucking is so addicted to drama. But I don't know. I think it's either that or just some random whatever in her life that because she clearly has a lot of drama in her life, whether it be because she's caused it or just is attracted to it. It's just kind of whatever. Yeah.
I don't think it was Tony's ex Guma either, really, but I don't think it was Gloria. I mean, obviously, I had the same thought. Like when it was happening, like, oh, clearly she did. Just the way she plays it, I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, go ahead.
It's interesting because this scene leads up to him saying that he smacked that girl. She's not going to do that again. And he's like, oh, you really hit her? Like, it's a really interesting tone she does with that. Like, really interesting because it's. You take it as like, oh, you big man, oh, you really hit a woman, huh? But there's also the aspect that she's attracted to danger as well underneath that is a really interesting way it's done.
Yeah, and I mean, they just also kind of, she talks about how she has some sort of drama at work, where she's, saying she's being sexually harassed, but then she might lose her job because of it. Like whoever it is, some guy making a pass at her or something. So yeah, I mean, she's just now that he's kind of opened up this idea of like, hey, you could talk about your life. That's all he's going to hear about. And he doesn't want to. And yeah, like you called out the way she reacts to him talking about how he slacked the shit out of her, and there's like a repulsion, but also an attraction to that. And just the fact that she's really good at goading him into an argument as well.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what are you not saying? And then it's like becomes his fault. And as he brings up later, like, I'm a grown man, and she's like berating him over something he has nothing to do with.
Yeah. So just to sort of raise the stakes a bit further, she does also call the house just to talk, about, hey, you should definitely get this car because, his other mistress called the boat. She may as well call the house. And he'll like that. And this is how Tony finds out that this woman is like, and Tony's having a grand old time. He's just eating his cereal. He doesn't know about any of the shit going on in the rest of the episode. He's just kind of like, yeah, Gloria's talking a lot, but that's the biggest problem on my plate right now.
Some of my favorite moments in this whole show are just when they're hanging out in that kitchen and Tony's all disheveled and just woke up, because it feels so real in a weird way. And it's like, we always make the sitcom goof, like, it is very sitcom-y, but then a lot of stuff happens. It's some of my favorite moments for sure.
Yeah. So he drives over to the Globe, the car place, grabs her, drags her around a corner, gets her up against the wall, hand on her throat. She's smiling, and talks her way out of it. Kind of? No, she doesn't. No, it's over. That's the thing. Now it's over. Obviously, for Tony, this is enough.
Yeah, it's over. And then a quick callback. We'd already kind of talked about it, but when Carmilla goes to see the priest and he kind of gives her like there's good in him, that is when she kind of first shows like an embarrassment over that super expensive ring that she has. Like she covers it up when he looks at it. So it's kind of like the first hint at that. I just wanted to call that out real quick. But yeah, he goes there and kind of just he doesn't beat her up, but he's like beating her up basically. And it's very interesting, like in this current climate, because it's almost like it's not quite that the show's asking us to be like, yeah, kick her ass, but in a weird way, it's kind of like this dumb bitch, like what did she expect? So it's interesting that the show's putting us in that position, and I guess that's kind of been the constant thing of this season. between wanting Tony to, torture and beat the rapist and torture to death, as I'd imagine, and watch Ralphie destroy and beat to death the pregnant lady. But now kind of he's he's kind of a cool dude.
Yeah, does everyone remember that? All the listeners? Just wanted to remind you all of that. And now we're just kind of like, oh, but he makes the greatest spaghetti.
I was going to bring that up. That's exactly what I was going to bring up. And I actually was doing that like a week ago. I was like, oh, yeah, like what Ralphie said. I put the heat on. I was putting
teaching you cooking. Oh, God. Yeah.
But
Did it work? No, this is important. Did it work?
It worked great. It did.
Ralphie,
it absolutely
such a great guy. Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, and also wanting Tony to like fuck up Ralphie, and in general, like wanting it's like the show wants us to want these things, but then also like punishes us for wanting it. So next scene is a dinner with all the ladies, all the wives hanging out, and they get to talking about how you got to be Hillary Clinton because, take it, spin it on its head when you're being cheated on, build your own thing because that worked out great for her.
Yeah. And how it's still relevant today. Look what she did. She's a role model.
Yeah.
And yeah, we see all the wives. We got Rosalie April, Angie Bumpensero, and Gabrielle. What's Silvio? Why am I spacing Silvio's last name?
Demonte? Demetrio? I don't know. But yeah, so okay, that's who the blonde was then.
Silvio Dante. Sure. Yeah, Gabrielle. I wanted to remember her name because that's actually that's his real wife.
Oh, okay. But so that's the blonde one?
Yes. Yeah, that's Silvio's wife.
Yeah, that's the one I was like, who's this one? I don't know. But yeah, they do talk about like cheating and everything. Obviously, there's cheating going on in this episode, but it is interesting that Carmilla's not really aware of it. Of course, she's aware of it in a general sense, but like it never really like touches on her storyline. She's oblivious to it, even hanging out with Gloria, and yet this conversation's there spurring like she's actually dealing more with the obvious like mobster side of things and the blood money, but this conversation comes in almost like it's touching on the other storyline going on because she's not actually dealing with that, But yeah, it's all part of it. It's all part of being in a relationship with Tony.
Well, it's interesting because, before Gloria, I'm sure Tony was fucking around, but it's like we weren't really seeing it on the show. Yeah. But, we saw when Carmilla was reacting to Charmaine and thinking that Tony had something going on with her when he wasn't doing anything. So, yeah, it's just a constant assumption, which, is rightfully so, that he's doing bullshit behind her back.
Yeah.
And then we get Tony at the Bing, and he gets a call from Gloria's hysterical on the phone, because now this is like the worst thing she could do as far as Tony, because his whole thing is he built her up as this self-assured, put together woman, but now she's hysterical on the phone, and Tony, it's basically his ex-guma all over again, and even worse to an extent.
Yeah, so he goes over because she's really hysterical. I think with everything talked about with Melfi, I think he is concerned that she's going to do something to hurt herself just again like the ex-guma did a bunch of pills or something, or I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
But so he goes there just to sort of stop that, is how I read it at least. But he's still like keeping it light. Like she's saying she needs someone to talk to. He's like, what about him at the Buddha and everything. But yeah, this is a great scene. It goes completely off the rails.
Yeah. He smacks her. And then he starts saying, like, you think my life's great or whatever. You think I got it so put together? And kind of what finally triggers it. What does she say? Did you catch it?
Well, he comes there as well to say that it's completely over now, like to make that clear and stop contacting him. But that's when she goes from being hysterically upset to being angry and starts talking shit. Let's see. yeah, just because he buys me some ridiculous gaudy ring, that's when he slaps her.
But then when he finally realizes
Oh,
who, because what she says,
Oh, poor you.
which is,
yeah.
Oh, poor you.
Jim, you killed it.
Oh, poor you.
so there you go. Like, I thought it was a great moment. Like, I was like, oh yeah, that's such a fucking,
That's great.
that's such Olivia. Like, I mean, the audience, we should already be here though, so I get it. But I guess it is us watching Tony get to that point, and I loved it.
Oh, poor you.
Do we have the technology to play those at the same time?
I could try. Let me see here.
Yeah, it seems like we should.
Yeah, let me pull one up in. Whoop, 1 second here.
This is worth the wait for sure.
Is that?
I can tell already.
That?
Oh, poor.
Whoops. All right, here we go. Yeah, they might be off because I'm gonna have to try to click them at the same time. But
okay, great.
Let's see what we got here.
Oh,
poor you.
Poor you.
That worked
pretty good. That was good enough, yeah. But yeah, she starts saying like that like, oh, you just take a dump on me and walk away, and he's like, you're my mother. And also when she says like, oh, I surrender, burn me at the stake, it's really like good. She definitely watched. I can't remember the actress's name, but watched Olivia Soprano like a lot to get that balance right. And when he tries to leave there, she starts throwing out more threats of like, I'm gonna call your family, I'm gonna do this and that to get it even further escalated.
Yes, but also, you know, at the core, what she's saying, she's right. You know, even going back to like Pine Barrens when she's reacting maybe a certain way, but you know, he comes by and he fucks her and then he's like, all right, gotta go. Like,
yeah,
you know, Tony, I mean, I think it's apparent, everyone knows he's not really the good guy here, especially when he's slapping her, beating her up. But I mean, I guess you can argue that she does know he's married and has a family, so don't even put yourself in that situation. But everything she's saying at the core is correct. Like, you know, I just have to sit here by myself and wait for when you feel like having sex with me and maybe spending a little time with me, and then you go back to your family, and then I'm alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, she's a sad character, is a tragic character. And yeah, it gets to the point where she's pushing it because, yeah, you know, she already knew he had a daughter at school, but you know, she also got a little information from driving Carmilla around earlier in the episode. So now she's throwing all that in his face. Like, I'll go tell your daughter up at school. I'll tell your wife. And that leads to like a chase. And yeah, he basically starts choking her. And she, in that moment, she definitely wants it. She wants Tony to just finally end it for her.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what makes him not do it. Not that he would necessarily have done it anyway, but in this case, it's what makes him go like, oh, like, I'm doing what you want here. Like, you've manipulated me to this point, sort of on purpose, even if you didn't realize. And because she's there saying that, it's hard to, like, it's not as satisfying killing someone if they're asking for it anyway. So that's obviously part of it.
Yeah, we're not going to be like when Tony's depressed and then he gets to do bad shit, like beat people up and kill them, and then he's happy. He's not going to get the same kick out of it. But I mean, it's interesting that, I mean, because what episode did Gloria first show up? It was like fairly late in the season, right?
I couldn't say.
Let's see here. Double check 1 second. It looks like, yeah, no, it's episode 8. Okay. So I mean, it's interesting because I did feel like thinking back on it, I felt like this went longer.
It's funny because I was about to guess like 3, 4, episode 4.
So I mean, they did cover a lot in, you know, a short amount of time, especially because the way this season has been, we've talked about it a little bit. Like, it's not so much all over the place, but you know, we stay with something for a little while and then we go to something else. Like Jackie Jr. is kind of always there, but sometimes not. or sometimes it's about his relationship with Tony, sometimes it's about him with Meadow. Ralphie obviously is a big deal kind of early on, and then their little rivalry, which kind of has gone away. Then Gloria and Tony, and of course, I mean, going back to the beginning of the season with the death of Livia Soprano and the stupid lamp that was put in the basement.
Yeah.
So a lot of weird, interesting twists and turns this season. But I feel like this thing with Gloria is very strong.
Yeah.
Especially kind of some of the obvious things they're tackling with Tony and his mother, and just even delving into the different levels of anxiety and depression, and how it's not always what it looks like on the outside. Someone who quote has it all may not quite have it all upstairs. They're crazy.
Yeah, that's very true. And speaking of not having it all upstairs, next scene is the robbery. Biggest gunfight to date, maybe, in Sopranos history, according to David Chase on the DVD commentary on Wikipedia.
I did see that. Yeah, I did see I haven't really thought about it, but
there's a lot of guns.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering. I mean, I guess if it was the commentary, because I mean, I guess no spoilers. But honestly, I don't remember if there's anything else bigger in the future. So we'll see.
It was for the season 3. Well, you're right. I was thinking like, oh, it was just referring up to that point because it was season 3. But if it was the DVD, it would have been later. Maybe, I don't know.
If it was the DVD commentary, it had to have been recorded before the end. So yeah, I'd imagine to date. And yeah, bunch of idiots, and we get to even see their driver is the guy that had his throat, I mean, not his throat, his like jaw wired, right? Because he got Furio beat him up for dealing.
Oh, is that guy? Okay, cool.
That guy, he's got such a crew of idiots. Jackie Jr.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it is that guy. You're right. Oh well, he's recovered well then. Great choice, because he gets out of there. At least he knows what to do when he hears a shot from inside. Because yeah, it starts obviously. I mean, first of all, Christopher's there. That's the guy they wanted to impress, and he's there saying like, "You know who you're robbing, huh?" And they're all being cool, like except the guy who just keeps saying weird shit. Sonny, is that his name?
Sunshine. Yeah, they call him Sunshine. And what's interesting is, I mean, Jackie is the one that just loses it. He just loses it and shoots Sunshine because he keeps talking. What he's like, you leave with your heads or whatever the fuck, all his dumb little non sequiturs that he's saying, kind of amping up the tension. I mean, I guess he does talk, and Christopher kind of gives him a look. Someone comes out of the bathroom and they shoot, but they don't hit him. And then we see the driver drive away. And it's just kind of a tense standoff, and then Jackie just unloads into the dealer.
Yeah,
it's a bizarre choice. Like, I know he's dumb, and I know, like, obviously your adrenaline's going, but it's a weird, like, he does. I don't know if it's a choice to make it seem where like he doesn't really have a way to talk himself out of it because he is the main triggerman that like puts it over the top here.
Yeah, and I didn't realize it was him because they're all wearing their things, and Christopher's there. He sees who it is and hears who it is. But I was like, huh, what? Okay, I guess it was that guy. And also they're on the crank, so that they say like, because at the start, like you mentioned, he's now the one who wants to pull out, and then they're like, let's do it before the crank wears off. So obviously he's high strung, but yeah. It really is amazing how poor his choices are continuously. I've never seen him make a good choice, really, ever, I think. So, great character.
So he shoots the dealer, which allows people to kind of dive out of the way. Christopher grabs his gun, shoots the guy with the shotgun, like right in the head. And then Furio gets into a shootout with somebody, but he takes like a bullet to the thigh, and then they run out of there. Furio's yelling in Italian because he got shot. Their wheelman's gone. Jackie boosts the car and leaves his buddy. Drives by his friend, who gets like quadruple tapped in the head because 2 guns pointing in his face, and he's hey, we're with Ralphie. Sorry, Chris. And they just keep shooting him. Even when he falls, they're like putting more bullets into his body because that's what if you're a gangster, don't matter if he's dead. You want to make sure. Just keep shooting.
Yeah. And definitely reminds me again of the thing from last season, where these two kids tried to kill Christopher, and then they're like, "Oh, we're with Richie," you know, or like they were doing it to impress him. And I don't think Ralphie would have been like, "Oh, great, you killed Sunshine." Like that's not what I was saying.
Yeah.
But Jim, before we forget, and let's experience some sheer joy here because we got quite a few buttons to press.
Yes,
for everyone counting. Yeah, we're at 27 deaths at the moment. We're about to crank that up.
So what do we got? We got Sunshine, we got Shotgun Guy, and then we have, is this Carlo or was that Carlo?
Well, his dumb friends. I never learned his name, but he was in a lot of the season. Isn't that the guy who he wants to take Meadow to?
Carlo might have been the Shotgun Guy. I forget this because this main friend, who I forget his name, he's the one that was supposed to call Carlo.
Oh yeah.
So
right.
We got 3 deaths here.
We got 3 deaths. I'm gonna find the name. Yeah. It's Dino.
Dino, yes, yeah. He's always talking about it. So Dino and Carlo.
Yeah.
I missed them already. So bam, 1, 2, 3, and then of course we got
Malanga.
I was really like,
yeah.
I was really. Wait, where we're at? We're at 27, so 8. We should be at 30 now.
Yeah, we're at 30.
Okay, cool. Yours still says 29.
Oh, yeah. Let me fix that.
Yeah, it's the counting system we use. It's very medieval, but it's. I really was when we were reading that interview, or sorry, that the review. I was like, sheer joy. That's a bit of an overstatement. But then you like play it 3 times in a row, and I'm like, okay, they were right.
Yeah, they were right. We're loving it.
Yeah.
We love our sound effects and our counters.
Yeah. So they got to pull a dick doctor out of his commercial to go have him work on Furio. And then we get the great scene from the opening where Christopher's saying, if I find this guy, I'm going to do him tonight. And Tony says, no, you're not. And, you know, it's a great scene. It's basically all of it was in the intro there where Christopher calls Tony a fucking hypocrite who preaches wise guy shit. Meanwhile, we're the only ones who play by the rules. And I'm not sure if he's referring to they're part of the crew or referring to the wise guys in general, or that everyone else, like, I don't know exactly what he means. It feels so right. He's so right. But I'm like, what does he specifically mean?
Yeah, no, because the thing is, like, I love this scene. I mean, that's obviously why I picked it to start the show. I wish there was more to this season, though. I wish, because, I mean, we've spent a little time with Christopher, but this is kind of hinting at a Christopher-Tony relationship that we haven't really explored too much. I mean, I guess a little bit. I mean, we've seen it in the past, obviously, season 1 and season 2. You know, they're back and forth between, you know, Tony realizing Chris is depressed, and then, you know, Chris dealing with that, and Chris just dealing with being kind of a young, dumb, I guess, better version than Jackie Jr. and Bevilacqua, at least, because he at least didn't go that far. But I just wish there was a little bit more here that they were feeding off of that we had seen in this season. But I still love it, and I still love what it hints at the very least, of things to explore here. But yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I definitely loved, or I definitely believe in the love between them. It's just when he says, like, I loved you, and I'm like, what changed? Like, how big did this change? Like, was there something else? And it's like you mentioned, the season has been a bit, now we're exploring this, now we're exploring that. The most recent thing is Pine Barrens, where he came out and saved him from the middle of nowhere. And he was definitely like, I don't know, he was more on his side than
Paulie.
Well, yeah, Paulie Peanuts. Is that his name?
Paulie Walnuts.
Yeah. It's definitely like, I don't know. Maybe there's a moment early in the season where he's like, oh, this Christopher kid, but he made him a made man and all of that, and I know that's stressful and all, but I also thought the same thing. Great scene, but like, I loved you, and now, to be fair, Tony has continuously been a hypocrite when it comes to Jackie, so I mean, he's right. I feel the same type of frustration here, where even now, when he's like shot people and shot made men even, it's like, no, it's cool. We'll sweep it under the rug.
But the problem here for us, the audience, is we've seen Tony do this for Christopher. Maybe not to this extreme, But I mean, if we go back to season 1 with Junior's trucks and stuff like that,
Oof, yeah.
you know, Tony has taken care of Christopher in a similar fashion. So that's why it doesn't hit as much. But I still appreciate the scene, and I at the very least appreciated maybe it's just more setting up this, you know, this relationship, or deeper look at this relationship that we'll see down the line, especially as Chris is coming in to his own more now that he's a made guy and trying to step up. Now, the interesting thing though here is I don't really know the read on where Tony's at as far as, you know, does he care about Jackie Jr., or is it like he says in this scene, it's more about the murder, and it's about, I don't want to bring heat down on us, because he you know, we start to see this back and forth he has with Ralphie, where kind of neither of them want to make the choice. Yeah. And I think initially when I watched this, I always just thought Tony cared for Jackie Jr. and didn't want to do it. But then when I'm watching it now, it's like, no, he's kind of pushing Ralphie to do it. And then Ralphie almost doesn't want to do it.
No, but I see all of that as just sort of play acting, like, because of the way the scene starts with Silvio, and he's there like, what did we say? Now we got to play out this thing where we both know where it's going to go. And the way they talk to each other as well is like, it's like, it's not real. Like, it's just they're doing it because they need to do it, because I think your initial read, but this is my first watch, so I might change my mind, but I agree with your initial read being that he doesn't want to do it because it's Jackie. And he obviously, like, 3 guys just got shot. Like, they can handle getting rid of someone, and like they've done it a bunch, like, all the time. The feds don't really matter. They can't even get the airplane thing to blow up, and they can't plant a lamp properly. So I don't think that's it. But it is an interesting scene, the next one there with Richie. Oh no, not Richie, Ralphie. Sorry.
Yeah.
When he comes in, and you're right. Tony's sort of laying it on him because he's the captain. It's his game. He's got to make the choice. But he's already said to Christopher that, like, no, this is not happening, because he knows what Ralphie's going to do. Ralphie knows what he's going to do, it feels like. So when he says, oh, I want to give the kid a pass, Tony's like, yeah, you're sure, it's up to you. But he's already decided that that's what's going to happen.
That you think Ralphie's already decided that he's not going to give him a pass, or he is going to give him a pass?
I think Tony's already decided that Jackie Jr. is not going to die, but he has to make it seem like it's Ralphie's choice, because it's his card game, and, you know, it's tied to his relationship with Jackie's mother as well. But he knows that Jackie doesn't want to do it, or at least that's how I think he feels. So that's why they just act this out to sort of give each of them the respect that is due, which they've not done in any other scenes this season, but sure.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. I mean, I guess we'll have to see how it plays out in the finale here. But it's weird because I don't know. Like Tony, I guess Tony, if anything, I just feel like doesn't want to make the choice. I don't really feel like he has a sway in either way, kind of. I'd have to rewatch the scene, but I guess I just read it completely different from what I remembered when I watched it this time. But I think it's kind of an interesting the way it plays out, and it is this. I feel like Tony is kind of enjoying this. This is what you wanted, Ralphie. You know, you wanted to be captain, so great. Now you're captain, and this part, it's not all just making money and bossing your Goomba friends around or whatever. You got to make these choices, because I mean, Ralphie, because Ralphie, like, you know, we see him go back to Rosalie, right? Yeah, and he has to deal with that, because even though Ralphie, as we've seen, doesn't seem like he really cares about anyone, it does feel like he cares about Rosalie, just in that classic, you know, mobster, I cheat on my significant other, but I really love her kind of way.
Sure. I think you got a good point, because I did forget about, like, the last part of the scene, because they do all that I described, and then Tony's like, yeah, that's good. Who cares about the shit they don't have the balls to say to your face, you know? So what if the kid disrespected you? And that's when it's almost like, he's goading him into doing it, or just wanting to shit on him a little bit. Either way, but it's like, oh, they don't have to live with your commitments and all that, Ralphie. So it's really interesting, because if he does push him, if he is pushing him to actually get rid of Jackie, then he just told Christopher not to do it because he wants Ralphie to do it.
Well, I think it I always glossed over it until rewatching it when he talks about, a murder brings a lot of heat on. Although I guess, you could argue that just because Ralphie's in a different crew, but maybe it is just about keeping things. If it's that much disconnected, even if it's, one person over, it does help. And I guess thinking back to Tony's brush with the Bevilacqua thing last season, he learned from it, I don't want to kill a kid who's almost like my son's age, or almost a nephew to me because it was my dear friend? Or did he learn, like, I don't want to be that close to a murder because I almost went to jail?
Yeah, it does. It is interesting. Maybe your take on it is different too, because you know what's going to happen and I don't. Hey, dear listener, in case this is your first episode, I've never watched The Sopranos. So yeah, I am looking forward to the last episode, because even though Ralphie comes in saying he wants to give the kid a pass, it's almost like Tony turns him around. But yeah, then we go. Well, actually, yeah, he gets to come back home and comfort him. Let's just quickly go through the last scenes here. We do have the therapist's office where Tony gets to unpack some of the scene there that happened. He gets to say, like, stop saying I want to fuck my mother. And she's like, no, but you want to please your mother. You want to, like, get the approval of your mother still.
Yes. Yeah. And is Tony, because they mention suicide by cop.
Yeah.
So is Tony telling Melfi, yes, I slapped her around and I was choking her. I know I was gonna kill her, but then she I'm gonna kill her. So but I guess it's kind of that, sometimes it's fun when they drop in some of these scenes where we haven't seen, like, the initial part of the story, and I'm always wondering, like, how did he get here? But I guess that's the joy of being able to drop in the scene, because you could be like, all right, no, they're already talking about it. He did some sort of way to get to this point. But yeah. So, that's kind of my only note I had on it. I don't remember any of the specifics really from this discussion, besides I remember them talking about suicide by cop.
Yeah. And obviously the last important scene is...
actually, wait. I'm sorry. Back up real quick. Isn't this also when Melfi says, you'll never leave Carmela, but she'll leave you?
No, she says, no, you'll never leave her. She might leave you. But,
yeah, that's what it is. Okay.
Yeah. That's true. So Gloria gets threatened, not by Tony, but by this Weasley guy who I can never remember the name of, the twin who didn't die. And yeah, he just threatens her. We get the scene where Ralphie comforts Rosalie. Yeah.
I was just going to say on that Patsy and Gloria scene, I think that's a great scene, because I love the way, he's like, it won't be cinematic. Like, you'll just see my face. It's not going to be this, Shakespearean tragedy. It's going to be this weasel guy who shows up and fucking shoots you and leaves you for dead. Such a smart way to handle that, Tony. I'm impressed. And then, Ralphie and Rosalie. Like, Rosalie is such a tragic character. I guess it's not that we saw that she had much of a relationship with Richie, but I guess the Aprils in general, because she lost her husband in the first season, and then of course Richie in the second season, but I guess that doesn't quite count for her. But I like the way she's acting, because she knows this way of life, and she knows what happens to people, and she knows her son is basically as good as dead, barring some sort of like Ralphie or Tony, someone stepping in here, chalk another one up for the Aprils.
Yeah, she plays it great, and I wonder how that will affect Ralphie's take on what's going to happen next as well. So the final scene is my only question. What's with this final scene where Weasley guy just gets in a car and drives home? Like, why did they end on this?
I was going to ask you the same thing. Because they it's almost like they didn't want to do the thing we've talked about this thing, and they kind of have it at the end of this episode, the thing of where Tony comes home after therapy and after kind of having these small little enlightenments to find Carmilla, and it's almost like he has a new appreciation for her in a weird way. And we have yet another moment of like she heats up some leftovers for him, but at the very least, you know, she's taken the ring off and she's studying real estate, I guess, trying to, you know, be Hillary Clinton in her world. And then they cut to Patsy, and I don't know, I guess, are they trying to show that he has a good relationship? Because it seems like he's talking to someone, he's like, oh no, I picked up the stuffed shells, and like he's doing something for his wife, even though he's like a murderous weasel. I mean, I don't know the read on it either. That's kind of what I was getting from it, is like, is he's better than Tony in a weird way?
The only thing I thought was like showing how it's not good though, but like showing how mundane a thing of like going and threatening Gloria's life is, and then like, oh yeah, I'm just gotta pick up the groceries, but that still isn't like a great ender. It's an interesting choice, and if you have any thoughts on that, please do send them to us, because I'd love to hear why they did that. So just email us at showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com. Let us know, why did Patsy get in the car? Is this foreshadowing? I thought like, okay, car bomb. Like that's where my head was at. But then like he just drives off. I'm like, okay, I guess that was a scene. So please, again, that's showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com. Let me know why he did that.
Yeah, I think that's a good read on it as well. Just the whole like the same as when you just go to work and you're like, damn, I got to get up early tomorrow. It's like, oh, man, I got to threaten a woman.
Yeah.
I can threaten a woman and make her afraid. And then I got to make sure I pick up the baguettes on the way home, you know?
Yeah. Marie, the baguettes. Hurry up.
It's almost like, did he play through his mind like, all right, maybe I pick up the pasta and the baguettes before, and then I already got the car. Or is that kind of too much? Is it going to set in there? It's cold out. Is that going to affect the bread? I'll get it after. I'll threaten the lady, and then but yeah, I mean, I kind of like both of those. I do feel like there's a weird connection to Tony, to seeing Tony and Carmen before that. But yeah, I don't have quite a full grip on it, but also I kind of like what they do. I like how they did it. I just don't fully have a grasp on what they were getting at.
Okay. Yeah. So do email us. As we mentioned at the top, we do really appreciate reviews as well on iTunes. If you want more things we make, Jim has a podcast called Jim and Them that you can find on any podcast platform or jimandthem.com. You can also find more from me on my YouTube channel called Awesomepedia, or at awesomepedia.org. I also have some other podcasts and things on there. But I think until next time, there's just one more thing, Jim.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Cut to black.